Hey, this is Pat Heyman. Welcome back. I've got another video for you. Today we're going to talk about Zencash and secure nodes. Now, Zencash has been in the news recently because of a 51% attack. And then in the next couple days, Tika from the Palm Beach group put out a sell recommendation on Zencash. And their price basically went from about 0.48, 0.5 all the way down to 0.3 in a matter of about 5 to 15 minutes. And then it hung around there for a little while. And then it went down to eventually, I think as low as about 0.26. So this represents possibly a really great buying opportunity if you still like the project. I personally do. I think that they're doing a lot of things that are going to be good in the next couple of months. They're going to be ASIC resistant coming up at the end of June, beginning of July. They're going to increase their block rewards for secure nodes from 3.5% to 10%. And they're also going to do another 10% of block rewards for super nodes. So my guesstimate is that once the increased block rewards come online, that secure nodes will get about 70% ROI per year in new Zen, and super nodes when they first come online are going to get probably around 200% ROI. So I am positioning myself for that eventuality, and whether you should or not, that's up to you. I'm not a financial advisor, just telling you what I'm doing. Now, this particular video is, okay, so you've got 4 or 5 secure nodes worth of Zencash. How do you host them? Is it too expensive? The traditional way of doing it is you're going to rent a VPS with at least 4 gigabytes of RAM, and you're going to set up individual nodes on each of those VPSs. So that can cost a bit of money because even with a cheap provider like OVH, that's still going to cost you about $7.50 to $8 a month. One of my clients asked me about this particular claim by Tech is the Way on the Zencash secure node channel. And Tech is the Way says that he's able to get 16 secure nodes running on an €8.99, which is about $11 right now, a little bit less than $11, 12 gigabytes of RAM VPS from Contabo. And then he wrote this Ansible script or playbook that runs the whole thing. Now, if you don't know what Ansible is, so before we get into that, so my client said, hey, can you investigate this and see if it works? Because I've got quite a few secure nodes that I picked up during this crash, and I'd like to get them online in as cheap a way as possible. So he asked me to investigate it. About 30 hours later, here we are making this video explaining what I've done and what I've learned. Now, if you don't know what Ansible is a kind of like a remote server management software that was, I guess, originally developed by Red Hat. And so what this is going to do is going to allow you to kind of install things in virtual containers, called LXC, Linux containers, on the VPS. So if you can set it up correctly, the promise is that you can not instantly, but relatively painlessly, within about 10 to 15 minutes, have a new secure node up and running and ready to go. Now, I can tell you that it does work as advertised with a big if, and that if is if you know what you're doing. And I did not know what I was doing, and it took me a long time. I was thinking to myself, I could do 10 nodes in the time it's taken me to do this. I could have done 100 nodes in the time it took me to figure out how to do like 5 nodes using this Ansible method. But once you know how to use Ansible, then it can become a lot easier. So let's just take a look at what I've learned and how you can set it up for yourself, or you could have someone like me set it up for you. Choice is yours. I'm going to assume you already have at least 42 Zen to be able to set up a secure node in the first place. And in order to take advantage of this particular thing, you'd want at least 2 Zen. At 2 Zen, it begins to break even. And once you go above 2, it becomes more profitable than pretty much any other virtual private server you can think of. So here we are at Contabo. Contabo.com. We're going to click on VPS, and the one you want is this one right here, the €8.99 per month, with 1 free month if you pay at a year at a time, I guess. You're like, but I don't know how to pay euros. I'm an American. I only do dollars. Well, they accept PayPal, and PayPal will do the conversion for you. So this is the one you want, and once you get it, then you're going to log in just like you would ordinarily with any old VPS. So I've got that right here. So we're set up, we've logged in. Now, if you don't know how to secure a Linux VPS, well, then you should learn how to do that. But essentially what you want to do to get things running is you want to create a new user. You want to configure SSH so that it's authorized key only. You can't disable root logins at first. Once you get them up and running, then you can. But you have to have root logins enabled in order for the Linux containers to get set up the way that the playbook is running. So you should also need to configure a firewall and limit SSH. If you don't do that step, it is quite possible to lock yourself out. I've had a lot of conversations with Linux or with Tech is the Way, and you know, when you're working with someone else's scripts and playbooks, a lot of times they just know that this is how I do it, but it's not necessarily obvious to someone coming from the outside. Oh, that's what I need to do. And so I locked myself out of a server, and eventually ended up scrubbing the whole thing and reinstalling Ubuntu. And only then later I figured out what happened was that I hadn't configured the firewall. The script configures the firewall, but at that time it didn't actually open up SSH to the outside. So I highly recommend that you do that yourself. You'll also need to create a swap file. And I've got the recommendations from Tech is the Way on what size swap file you should do, which is 60 gigabytes on this particular one. And that is pretty much it as far as getting your server set up. And then I'll walk through what you need to do in order for this Ansible thing to work to be able to create a secure node. And I'll show you how that works. Now, the main magic that lets all of this be possible is IPv6. So with Contabo, with this particular VPS, they give you a 64-bit or a /64 class bit, who knows, subnet. So basically you have like a quintillion IP addresses at your disposal, but they're IPv6. So we're going to have to learn a little bit about that. So I'm going to go ahead and configure this VPS with the things that I just talked about a second ago, and then we will come back and look at how we do the actual Ansible. Okay, so we've done all that initial server setup, and now what I'm going to do is going to install rsync nano ufw python python 3 pip libssl div git and keychain. Now the reason we do rsync is because we want to copy a blockchain from another server, and to do that, well, I love using rsync. Much better than SCP. Alright, so we've installed all those things. We installed UFW so that we could go ahead and configure our firewall. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now we can see that SSH is enabled. And I think I'm cutting off the edge there. Alright. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is, oh, and if you're wondering where these instructions are coming from, in Tech is the Way's post, you can see he's got a GitHub repository, and here are the instructions right here. Now, I've found that you actually need just a little bit more than that, and that's why I'm putting those extra things in. Next, we're going to pip install Ansible. Okay, and then we're going to upgrade cryptography, which it says it's already up to date, but it recommends updating pip. So let's go ahead and do that. It says pip install, but if you don't use, you need to say pip 3. All right, now at this point, we are going to clone the GitHub repository. So we're going to clone that particular repository right there. CD into that, And then we need to copy the example secrets and the example inventory. All right, so now let's show you how the magic of this Ansible thing works. So the first one is we need the inventory. All right, so the inventory, the only thing that you have to do in this file is uncomment however many secure nodes you want. So for tonight, we're going to be doing 3 secure nodes at once. So we're going to be uncommenting 1, 2, and 3. And then save that. Then the secrets file, I'm going to actually configure this off screen, but I'm going to walk you through how you do it. So the first thing is the IPv6 subnet. Notice that it ends in a colon. So let me just show you how IPv6 works. And then from there, I'll show you how you configure it here. All right, so let's imagine for a moment that this is a IPv6 address. But let's imagine for a moment that, let me just put it there. Okay, so as it comes to you, they'll assign you an IPv6 subnet, and you actually have all of these to play with. You can assign whatever you want to whatever container or whatever you want on your VPS. So you have, like, I think they say a quintillion IP addresses that you could use here. Now, see these zeros? Sometimes they are collapsed. So you might see it look like that, and then they would get rid of those zeros. So that is the exact same thing as when you had those zeros in there. So I'm going to include the zeros just for clarity. All right. So this would be your base IP address. And what we are going to do is we are going to configure a different subnet, number 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a 1, or you could put the 1 here, or you could put 57, anything you want. You can change any of these that you want, but it just has to be different from the base IP address of your entire virtual private server. And then, by default, the script wants to configure so you're going to change one of these numbers to something different. And then, by default, the secrets file is going to configure your secure nodes starting with the IP address ending 21, 22, 23, 24. So secure node number 1 would be 21, secure number 2 would be 22, secure node number 3, 23. You get the idea. As long as you keep that that naming convention, then nothing bad will happen. It'll all work out fine. So when you're dealing with IPv6 addresses, you don't use A records, you use quadruple A records. So you're going to create a quadruple A record. So let's say that I'm using the domain name example.com, and I would create a Zen01 or Zen1 or whatever you want to call it. 1.example.com, and I'm going to point that to this particular IP address. So in Namecheap or Dynadot or whatever domain registrar you're using, Cloudflare, you're going to create quadruple A records for each of your Zen nodes, and you're going to point them toward this particular naming convention. And remember, it doesn't matter what it is, you just have to be consistent. So if you wanted to use 11s in that subnet, then you could use 11s in that subnet. It doesn't really matter as long as you are consistent. All of your secure nodes have to be on the same subnet for this particular Ansible playbook to work. So in this case, I think I've already set mine up to look like that. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how you do that in the secrets. So using this as our example, we're going to copy everything up into including that colon, but we're not going to copy this last part. And we're going to put that right here in the IPv subnet. All right. You can leave this as it is For whatever reason, I like to call my directory Zenchain instead of just chain, but whatever. The very first thing you do after you log into your VPS is you should start copying your secure node over the blockchain. If you have one already and you want to save yourself a lot of time, it takes, like 16 hours to sync the blockchain from scratch. If you can download it from another secure node, you can download it in about 10 minutes. And then that makes setting up a new secure node much, much, much faster. So if you look over there, I already have one copying. So there you go. Your example, your domain name, you're going to do whatever you want. Example.com, crypto-something.com, Zen, whatever your domain name is, you're in there. Root, leave it as it is. And then for the host name, we're going to run this on the local host. So we're going to change that to localhost. And then you can really make whatever you want this to be for your sudo password. So let's go Kermit the Frog. And then you're going to have to create an SSH key and put that in right here. So we're going to hit Control-Z to put that into the background, and we're going to say SSH dash keygen minus T RSA minus B for bits 200 2048 and enter. It's going to ask us where to save it. Just hit default, and then enter the passphrase, and you want to enter a passphrase that you'll remember. Ask you to do it again. All right, and now we have our SSH key, and we've got to copy that into that spot. The other thing we have to do is we have to copy that same SSH key into the authorized keys file in our server. So let's oops, sorry. All right. And then we're going to edit. And you can just paste that in there and then save it. And then we need to give it read-only privileges. All right. So that's done. Now we're going to type FG to bring this back into the foreground and put in our SSH key there. And for whatever reason, I like to put it inside of quotes. All right. And make sure you're not double copying the SSH RSA. All right. Put in your email address here, whatever it is. I'm going to put EU because Contabo is in Europe, I believe Germany. And now this is where the magic happens. SecNode 01, 02, 03. This is how you configure these. So what you would do is you would put in, so let's say that you were calling these Zen 01, Zen 02, and etc. So you just configure these however you want, and whichever domain name you're going to be using, you would do that here. Then you're going to make sure that this corresponds to what you did earlier. Now, my recommendation is that you don't change this and you just go with the naming convention that it expects. So if this is your IPv6 subnet, then you're just going to say this :21 for Zen 1, this :22 for Zen 2, this :23 for Zen 3, and you just keep doing that. And then the last thing is you would put your staking address for each one of these below here. Now, let's say that you have 3 nodes right now and you plan to have 5. So what you could do is create your staking addresses in your Horizon wallet or whatever wallet you're using, and then just go ahead and put them in there. And even though they're empty right now, they're ready to go. So you set up your first 3, you run it. Then when you get enough for your fourth one, you just uncomment in that inventory file, uncomment secnode4, run it, bam, it's done. Then you get enough for the fifth one, you uncomment the 5, run it, bam, it's done. So that's the idea behind this, is that you can go ahead and pre-configure the secrets file, and then all you have to do as you bring each next one online is you would just uncomment the inventory and run the playbook. It's really nifty when it works, and that's why we're doing this video. Making it work is a little more complicated than you might think if you've never done it before. So I'm going to, at this point, turn the screen off, configure this for actually running a playbook, and then I will show you how to run it on the other side. I will say one other thing. You really want to make sure that you double check your secure node domain name, your fully qualified domain names, and your IP addresses. If you set it up incorrectly, then it can be a little bit of a pain to get rid of it, involving rebooting the server sometimes, and that could take all of your secure nodes down. One of the downsides of running 12 on a single server is that if something happens to the host server, then something happens to all 12 of your secure nodes at the same time. And that's just, well, scary. So anyway, double check them before you run it. It's a lot easier to prevent problems than to fix problems. Okay, so we've configured everything now, and let's go ahead and encrypt that secrets file just as a security measure. So one thing to be aware of is that your password will be visible in plain text, so it's not super secure if someone is watching, but it is secure if someone is able to hack in. They won't necessarily be able to see it. So the way you do that is Ansible-vault, and then encrypt, and we want to encrypt the secrets file. It's going to ask us for a password, so let's just put in a password, soda can. All right, so now if you try and edit the secrets file, you don't get anything because it's been encrypted. Nifty little thing. But now it's going to ask you to put your password in over and over and over again as you do all these things. So what we can do is we can source password.sh, and you put it in again. And now you won't have to enter your password anymore during this session. When you log out, then you'll have to do it again. So we're pretty much ready to go. There is one more thing that I want to do before we get done, and that is configure keychain. So keychain allows you to not have to put in your SSH key, your SSH key passphrase over and over again as well. So what we need to do there is we need to edit the bash rc file. And then we're going to source that file. It's going to ask us for our passphrase, and you put it in. So now when you run it, it won't ask you for it again. Otherwise, you run the playbook, and then you go away for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and you come back expecting it to be partway done, and then, nope, it's just been waiting for my SSH key this whole time. All right, so at this point, we are ready to run it. So Ansible playbook. And then we are going to do nodes.yml and sit back and relax. And it's going to fail because we need to reboot. But hey, I forgot that. Easy to forget that step. But if you don't reboot, it won't work when it gets to a certain point. At least that's been my experience. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this and then reboot, and we'll start it again after the reboot. So I'm actually just going to close out of that, and then going to reboot, and we're going to destroy the containers. Let me just show you how you can see your containers. lxc ls -f, and it looks like none of them were completely done. So let's destroy that one that it says is partly there. And you have to specify -n for name and not defined. Okay, so let's go ahead and reboot. Sometimes with Contabo, when you try and reboot, it kind of gets stuck. So we might have to kill this and then restart it. Sometimes you actually have to log into the control panel and restart it from the control panel. I'm not sure why that is, but every now and then you'll see that just kind of gets hung up. Okay, we are back from rebooting, and let's just get back into that Ansible folder, and let's also just do a quick check just to make sure it doesn't look like it's already done. All right, so there's nothing in that folder, so there's no containers to be destroyed. Let's just go ahead and source our password again. And it was soda can. And then run the Ansible playbook again. Now, in the interest of time, I am going to cut out any time that it gets kind of hung up on something. There's a couple steps that take 5 to 10 minutes to do. So I'm going to time elapse those so it comes off a lot faster than it really is. You can thank me later. All right, so we are good. All right, so now what you need to do is attach to a container. So let's go LXC attach -n, and then we need the name of one. So all right, so we're inside it, and if we ZenCLI get info, you can see that it's there. If you do get network info, we can see that this TLS certificate is true. And what we need to do now is we need to get a shielded address. So ZenCLI z_get new address. You get that new address, send 4 transactions of 0.025 Zen to it, and you're in business. One last thing to do after you send that collateral to it is you're going to want to restart the secure node tracker. So system ctl restart sec node tracker. And there you go. Let me just show you one other thing. I keep forgetting. If you look at the files in here, you see start SSH and stop SSH. So now that we've created these files, or created these containers, what we want to do is we want to stop SSH. So Ansible playbook stop, and that will actually shut down SSH on the containers themselves. And then what you can do is you can permit empty password authentication, no. And then we can also discontinue root logins. So you need to have root logins enabled in order to create them. But now that they are created, we can actually shut it down. And then the only thing we'll need is the LXC attach. That's pretty much it. We've secured our node now, in terms of you don't have SSH running except on your user account. You don't have password authentication enabled, so they've got to use an SSH key, and we've limited SSH. You could also do install fail2ban. You could also install rootkit hunter, just like the original guide showed. But you've done 99% of it in those first two items. Now, it's complicated. There's a lot that can go wrong. Ask me how I know. Again, this has taken about 30 hours to get to this point where it looks kind of like I know what I'm doing. And I still don't know what I'm doing. Also, be aware that when you are using someone else's code, if something goes wrong, you need to ask them for help. I've got to say that Tech is the Way has been extremely helpful. And I would highly recommend that if you take advantage of this particular script, Ansible script and playbook, that you donate some either Bitcoin or Zen to him. And I've asked him for his donation address. And once I get it, I will put it in the description of this video. Also, a big thanks to the client who asked me to investigate this in the first place, because without him asking me to do this video, I would not have learned this new thing. Ansible is pretty cool, but again, it is also very complicated. If you know your way around Linux, it's not terribly difficult once you figure out what's going on. And hopefully with this video, it'll get you up and running. Again, we just created 3 secure nodes in about an hour, and you could create 10 secure nodes in just a little bit longer, and they would have all happened automatically, where the only thing you have to do now is send the Zen fuel for the challenges, and that's all you have to do in order to have a running node, if you know what you're doing. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions. If you are interested in having me set up a large number of nodes using this particular method, you can get a steeper discount than usual on my services. Just fill out the form below and let me know that you're interested, and I'll talk to you later.